Namaskar, aspirants, and a very warm welcome to this special GS3 Economy Explainer brought to you by Rungta IAS Academy. Today, we're not just reading superficial newspaper headlines, we're literally unpacking a massive paradox in India's energy sector.
Absolutely right. See, as serious UPSC aspirants, you know that to fetch those top marks, you've got to understand the deep structural realities of the Indian economy. So let's just dive right in, shall we?
All right, picture this. You're sitting in the exam hall and you see a standard 15-marker mains question. Critically analyze India's green energy transition. Is our reliance on coal truly decreasing?
Now, here's the common trap, right? So many students will just throw in some impressive stats about our installed renewable capacity, write a nice conclusion, and move on. But listen carefully. The examiner is looking for much deeper analytical depth. We have to examine what's actually happening on the ground.
If you look at conventional metrics, you'd think, wow, India is absolutely nailing this green transition. I mean, over 2/5 of our installed capacity is now renewable. But hold on. Why do we still face these frequent energy price shocks? Well, that reveals a much more complex reality. And this brings us to a really crucial conceptual distinction, something you absolutely must highlight in your mains answers. We call this the great decoupling. You see, installed capacity is basically just the infrastructure we've built. It's the hardware. It is not the same thing as actual electricity generation.
Precisely. Installed capacity is just potential. Generation, on the other hand, is what's actually lighting up our homes, running our factories, and powering the Indian economy. To really grasp this gap, we've got to look at the hard data.
And the data is pretty striking, honestly. Look at April 2026. While renewables boast this massive share of our installed capacity, they actually generated only 15.8% of our electricity. Coal, meanwhile, it accounted for a staggering 71.8% of actual generation. Think about that. That is the true reality of our power production. And you know what's even more interesting? That 71.8% is only slightly lower than coal's 76.2% share way back in March 2019. So here is the absolute game-changer analytical point you need to underline for the examiner. Ready? Renewable energy is currently being added on top of coal rather than displacing it.
Exactly. Yes, India hasn't really added much new fossil fuel capacity since 2018, and sure, we've retired a few old plants. But because we're just supplementing our massive, expanding energy needs, coal still remains our ultimate backup and balancing source.
Which brings us to a piece of essential UPSC vocabulary you definitely want to drop in your answers: baseload reliability. Look, electricity demand doesn't stop, right? It's continuous. But solar and wind power, they're intermittent. They literally fluctuate with the weather and the time of day. Spot on. Therefore, to maintain that crucial minimum continuous power needed to keep our entire electrical grid from collapsing, that's the baseload. We absolutely, fundamentally still rely on coal. Okay, grab your pens because you'll want to kindly note down these 4 structural bottlenecks preventing a complete shift. First up, the intermittency of renewables. Second, the continuous nature of our electricity demand. Third, and this is a big one, the glaring absence of large-scale battery storage here in India. And finally, the lack of flexible grids. These structural realities are exactly why we can't just phase out coal overnight. It's a structural impossibility right now. Now, let's shift gears to the macroeconomic impacts, because this is a highly scoring area for GS3. Since coal remains our baseload, our domestic electricity prices are inextricably tied to global fossil fuel markets. That's right. Even sectors that look entirely domestically anchored are totally exposed to external commodity cycles. Why? Because fossil fuels still dictate the marginal cost of power in India. If you look at historical trends, you'll see our electricity prices moving right in step with Brent crude. And this reliance exposes us to a severe geopolitical vulnerability. Think about current geopolitical tensions, say, in West Asia. They affect India disproportionately.
Absolutely. A spike in crude prices isn't just about paying more at the petrol pump. It pushes up coal prices, hikes electricity tariffs, drives up inflation, and ultimately puts massive fiscal pressure directly on the government.
Now, as you know, UPSC evaluators absolutely love a good comparative framework. Globally speaking, India is still highly exposed to these shocks. But look at China. Oil and gas make up only 4% of their power mix, thanks heavily to massive EV adoption.
Or look at Spain. They have successfully broken the gas-electricity link completely using renewables. So yes, our transition is very real, but as this comparison clearly shows, we still have a long way to go.
So, how do we wrap up our mains answer with confidence? We give them the way forward. We have to shift our policy focus away from just slapping on more capacity to a holistic system transformation.
Exactly. That means heavy, sustained investments in storage infrastructure, aggressive grid modernization, expanding our transmission connectivity, and developing mature market mechanisms to actually integrate these intermittent renewables at scale.
Before we close, I want you to really internalize this pivotal insight. Quote, coal currently performs a stabilizing function within the grid that renewable energy, in its present form, cannot yet fully replicate. Please remember, acknowledging this fact isn't admitting a policy failure. It is a mature, realistic economic assessment. And showing that kind of balanced perspective, that is exactly what will fetch you those excellent marks in the exam.
All right, let's leave you with a scenario. Imagine you've cleared mains. You're sitting right there before the UPSC interview board, and they ask you this high-pressure question.
Until renewables can reliably substitute fossil fuels, how will India manage the geopolitical risks tied to its coal reliance?
Think about those structural bottlenecks, the baseload reality, and the systemic transformation we just unpacked today. Be ready to critically defend your stance. Keep revising with Rungta IAS Academy, and all the very best for your preparation.